This is the European edition of Breaking Banks, the world's #1 fintech podcast and radio show. We bring you the European unicorns, startups, founders, regulators, and leaders innovating the rapidly evolving fintech scene today. A truly localized podcast with both English and local language content, with some of the world's most well-known hosts and influencers in the fintech sector globally. Join us every week as we explore what makes the European Union a phenomenal proving ground for many of the fastest growing fintech plays in the world today. Okay, let's roll.
Welcome everybody, we are here at Money2020 in Amsterdam, and we are here at the Société Generale booth with Claire Calmejane. She is the Chief Innovation Officer at Société Generale, and we are here to discuss with her after her amazing speech, I have to say. So my first question to you, Claire, it's about the difficulties you have incurred in your digital journey. So you were speaking about the successful journey you have done with Société Generale, and I'm really curious to understand how was to harmonize the legacy of such a big bank like Société Generale and the innovation path you followed through.
I mean, it's a question where we could spend, an hour, days, nights, to answer. But first, over the last 3 years, there is 3 things I'm very, very proud about with the team. The first one is, we built all the cockpits across our segments. Société Generale is very diversified, and we have about 15 lines of business, 10 service units. We are 135,000 colleagues across the world, serving 22 million customers on retail with 7 retail banks, so it's quite huge. And we've managed, for mass market customers, mass affluent and high net worth, SME, large corporate, to really identify, what is the cockpit of our digital strategy, where do we stand, compared to competition, and what are our differentiators? Because, the digital transformation is very, very large, and it's important to have some strategic bets where you will differentiate your brand, in order to remain relevant for your customers. And that's one thing we're very, very proud to have managed to do that. Is we've also learned a lot of things. We are in our retail banks, we have about, more than 65% of our customers that are enrolled, and we are present in, geographies such as Africa, Russia, Czech Republic, Romania, France. So it's very, very diversified. What do we call, active digital customers? It's not just enrolled, actually. It's, you really transact, you really do an operation per month. And these customers, they visit us in average 30 times a month. So, can you figure out, crossing, your franchise, your brand 30 times a month, almost once a day. It's quite spectacular as a result. And we've managed to push digital sales up to threefold, depending on our geographies, up to tenfold, from threefold up to tenfold, and digital acquisition almost starting from scratch up to tenfold, in all our geographies. And that's the first thing I'm very, very proud about. Working with our top 60 digital leaders and animating this community around digital marketing. I guess the second one is around AI and efficiency. So, we had a portfolio when I arrived, and always about the number of use cases we had. But when I was looking at the value, I was like, it's not enough, it's not big enough, it's not scaling. And we've really managed over the 3 years to reach a 200 million expected value portfolio, and to do that at speed. So most of the portfolio value have been generated over the past 6 months, which means that we have the rails in order to accelerate again and reach scale. And some of these big AI are around, fraud management, legal AI assistance, about crunching a large number of documents when we make deals in our financing activity, but also at the heart of the bank, in the way we work and in the way we manage. Some other AI around predicting when a customer is going to be overdraft, and the likeliness in order to focus on customers that have the most vulnerability. So, we're really working this AI for human, AI to support our staff, AI for good, and AI which is trustworthy. And that's the second part I'm very proud about. And last is about structuring the innovation journey and innovation portfolio. In SocGen, there was a lot of new business model, a lot of activities, but what it needed is a structuration. What are the 5 teams we want to go after? We talked about Bank as a Service, and obviously we are here with Trésor today, which we acquired back in 2018, which was a fundamental in order to start our journey towards serving a a 1,100 billion market. Like, it's like, can we take 1% of this market? It's like, it will make everyone dream, at night. So Bank as a Service was a huge one, data-driven lending, digital asset, and we created Forge, which is going to be there as well, which is a full infrastructure working on DLT, which is enabling through a digital currency served by Banque de France, served by the regulator, large emission, large deal, rethinking, all the, back-end, backbone of capital market, and digital currencies. Obviously was the last one with the ECBs that have announced that we will have a digital euro in 5 years from now. So that's, really the three big achievements. And, I guess on the pitfall and what are holding us back, I guess I'm super lucky to have like really an awesome team. Talent, people are at the heart of this transformation. And it's also the most difficult things. So the way I did it in 3 years is a lot of people in our team. We're quite a small team, 45 people, but reporting to the general management, so with a huge impact and huge responsibility. And it was about taking people, in the organization that are large networks in order to put in motion this agenda and to really, bring the party and create this community of engagement, this sense of purpose of driving the transformation. Where are we going? Why are we doing it? And this is much more powerful when it's in action than actually reporting line or hierarchical, ways. But setting this agenda in motion is probably the hardest thing, but it's something I've done again and again.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. Every time I hear you speaking, Claire, first of all, you're super passionate of what you're doing, and you can really feel it. And of course, it seems like you are doing this from, 10 years. It's impressive how you made some good changes within your organization in such a short period of time, actually. And you are also, during your speech, you were talking about the transformation of your team, so how you need to take everybody on the journey with you, and that it's really impressive. You mentioned Trésor, and I've seen a lot of developments, of course, within SG Ventures, which was one of your also big initiatives within Société Generale. And what I noticed, but correct me if I'm wrong, is that the approach you had toward the investments was more a takeover kind of strategy and not a pure investment one as many other CVC are doing. So could you double click on that and explain us a little bit your choices?
Of course, Francesca. So as you pointed out, in our portfolio of SG Venture, we have about 40 lines today. About 5 of them are 100% acquisition. They've not been always 100% acquisition. Okay. Rizoka, our latest addition, actually we entered at 25% of the capital at the beginning through one of our subsidiaries, and we've seen several synergy, and we decided to materialize, afterwards, and basically to take over the company at 100%. Which is always a transition, because if we don't take 100%, there is call put and management transition which are happening over time, but that's also important to understand. So we have this acquisition, and we'll come back on it. We have minority ticket investments, so we have a couple of them, but again, from our observation, as we want strategic, we observe that the best for us is really to enter in this type of tickets, get call put and take over the company. So, we just had on stage Lemonero, which was coming, which is basically a Czech company, which is for marketplace, doing data-driven lending, one of our priority area, and enabling, a small business to predict what they are going to sell and basically to adapt, our lending capability based on this e-commerce marketplace trends which are happening. And with two other type of investments, we have consortia, which you find a lot in banks. Mm-hmm. So actually through R3 was a consortia, but also, there have been a couple of other Comgo, which is a DLT commodity business model. And the last one is fund of funds. So we do invest a little bit into VC funds. But this one is hard to really understand the monetization. So we've done it, it's more past activities that we have done than future. Going back to acquisition, SocGen have now done 5 large acquisitions. Yeah. One of them was Fiduceo. Fiduceo, we integrate 100% of the technology in Boursorama. It was a high hiring, so in order to boost, a Boursorama development plan. And clearly, Boursorama today is a leading online bank in France, but one of the most success stories in Europe. It's going to be 3 million clients, 600k customers just on the past year, growing again in terms of acquisition and reaching profitability next year. And it's a fully diversified business model, in terms of neobanks providing mortgage and the different one. I think it was a good strategy for Boursorama, but probably the reality is now we'll not do a 100% acquiring or integration into the system. So we learned from that, and when we did the second acquisition around Lumo, we decided to have them standalone. So it's a crowdfunding platform, B Corp, in order to provide ESG product. Actually, renewable energy started, but we are diversifying now what they can do. And it was a small company of 5 people that we started to say, okay, want to diversify our product base. We're not doing that on SocGen, so maybe we can learn from these guys and integrate them in our system. Trezor was the third one, and that was consequent. That was a massive push into our bank as a service strategy. And then we had Shine, a freelance neobank, which for us is a different animal. Shine is not a bank, it's like a platform business model. It offers, bank accounts based on Trezor technology, but not only, actually, it offers also ways to do your account, your accountant, facilitates removing all the administrative burden for freelancers. And that's really their ethos, and it's much more than that. And for us, they're quite close to our French retail bank, because we don't see them as competition. In less than 3 years, they've managed to acquire 150,000 active customers. So it's a huge growth, and we keep seeing synergies in the way we manage it. And for us, it's what we say is it did need to be the new Boursorama. It's part of our group portfolio diversification. And I've just talked about Trezor.
That's great, actually, and I really like that you point out also this learning by doing. We did the first step, we learned how it was, and we moved on with other things, and the connection you can make between all your acquisitions, actually. So
exactly.
This product of Trezor, it's really interesting.
Yeah, and they work together more and more. Rizzi is thinking about doing. Actually, you mentioned that, but I didn't mention. But our latest acquisition was 2 weeks ago. It's Keeper, which is a city mapper for B2B. And we did that in partnership with ALD, which is a car leasing B2B franchise of the group, the number 1 in Europe. And Skipper is actually a client of Trezor, who is going to work with Rizzi. And so we see the synergies of the portfolio which are unfolding. And again, we took about 18-20% of equity into Skipper with call put. And if the synergies are materializing, it could be an option is that we became one of the majority shareholders of Skipper, and it grew this huge business which is ALD. I think you're saying we're learning by doing. We also need to materialize the commercial opportunity, and also for the startups and for the fintech, it's important to see that we are walking the talk. So, in Shine, in less than 6 months, we're providing them credit facilities. They were the first one in Europe to have credit provided by Société Generale as part of the neobank. So it's important. These milestones are very important.
No, it's unbelievable, and this is exactly how I think it should be. Fully cooperation, fully collaboration between the bank and the startups and between each other. So is this the way basically where you can make a successful environment? I have a very last question for you, Claire. I was really in love with the last part of your panel, of your speech during the panel, because I saw you very passionate about ESG. And I really think that we keep talking about that, many people are talking about that, but we really need to walk the talk, as you were saying also before. Could you tell us a little bit more about your activities around that? What do you think about the whole ESG movement? Let's define it like that, and what Société Generale is doing around it.
Yeah, so I guess all traditional organizations have a long way to go in ESG, because our business model and the ethos of capitalization and how it works have not been built like that. So our GDP, per country, is driven through carbon consumption, carbon production, which is driving the industry, which is driving GDP and revenue. So it's a full system which you have to rethink. And I often say ESG is just the new digital. The same way, I consider my job is having, glasses and working with some senior executive and putting my glasses into their glasses in order for them to re-see the business. So for me, it's the same, wave of transformation which is coming through ESG. The only thing is digital. We have 10 years, we still have 5 years. ESG, we don't have these 10 years. Our challenge around climate change and environment are in a 5 years window, and we all need to harness that and to transform. And some of the pitfalls and challenges I see is like a lot of it is coming from regulation. It's coming from the regulator asking us to provide ratings, data, and people are saying like, oh yeah, I'm really good in this rating, or I'm really good in this, investor, ranking, or the way I'm recognized. And yes, because investor, it's very hard to find the data and the categorization of the data. And rating agencies, they will look at your emission, your financing, and saying, okay, this type of deals, basically you got out of coal. This type of deals are more on renewable energy, and etc. And that's one way to start the journey, but it's just not enough. We just have to do more and finding this economic business model. I was talking about Lumo or Shine. I'm very inspired by these two CEOs, very different size of company. Lumo is like 5'10", but obviously they are B Corp. And Olivier, the CEO, is super passionate about transforming the industry, making funding accessible for everyone, rethinking how everyone can have access to the real economy, and how projects which are quite powerful get funding and can grow and can develop. And Shine, very different now, about 150 employees, so a very aggressive 200% growth.
Completely different size, yeah.
But they're B Corp, and actually running through Trésor, they've managed that Trésor get some of the agreements, and maybe tomorrow Trésor will offer B Corp as a service as part of our offering. But more importantly, again, I'm very inspired when I talk to Nicola, because Nicola is like, oh yeah, I calculate for my family, how do I travel, I pay attention to how coffee is delivered, but also how coffee is delivered to the office, all the small things. And I have to say, I just need to start doing that, how do I do? And I decided to do something last year with the head of retail banking, and we launched a fintech competition for green fintech company, and the winner of the competition was Lubomila Jordanova from Planet. And Planet is a full software that enables you to calculate, your carbon footprint, but not only. It goes much more wider than that, around industrializing your ESG reporting. And she worked with most of the asset management. She developed policy team because she understands that the categorization of the data is not good enough. And I will really encourage everyone to start working with companies like Planet, because I'm like, this is a global game. We need to go fast, and we need to find speedboats in order to accelerate, this transition and doing that. So the first part for me is, how do we bring the innovation outside in, identifying the Shine, the Lumo, the Planet, and starting to work with them. The second one is, I think you need to get to the data, you need to understand what we are talking about. So in the management committee of SocGen, we had hours and hours of training about what are we talking about, what are the 2-degree scenario, what is the positive impact finance, do you understand enough? And when you're in front of something and you say like, I don't get enough of it, we're all human, we all want to learn and to master it, and that's really, really important, to have the message understood at this level, and then to cascade it through the organization by declining the ESG strategy. So for us, very strong around environment, but around social goals as well, with our diversity target, with 2023 having more than 30% women in management. And at the level of my team, I'm doing 3 things. The first one is we are, it's accessible for everyone. You can do the climate workshop, with all your team. It's an online tool, it's free, and it just helps you to materialize this conversation I was talking about. What are the challenges?
More concrete,
Make it more concrete. Second thing is we work with an accelerator which is called Make Sense, which have a program which is called Re-engagement for Social Citizen, and we try to apply and decline the CSR strategy into, okay, what does it mean for us, and how can we move the dial? And here we have to not get lost, because it's like digital. You can contribute to a lot, but is it part of your company strategy? Because we have to focus efforts into what is really going to move the dial, because when you're a company of 140,000 people, if you manage to move the dial in one point, it's already a lot. More than spreading your energy on everything. And the last one is we have role models like Shine and Lumo, and it's my job to put them in front of our senior executives, but also our teams in order to.
No, it's interesting because you really point out something that I think is very important. Like, everybody's talking about ESG on a regulatory perspective, but we need to shift a little bit the conversation more into the business side, probably the use cases and so on. So you are doing an amazing job with 2 and more than two actually companies that you mentioned that are very best cases and inspiring your company, but also, all the outside. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Francesca.
It was very good to talk with you as always, and thanks everybody for tuning in.
Thank you. Bye bye.
The FTS Fest is back. As 2021 develops, it will become more and more apparent how this year can truly mark the start of a second fintech revolution. Starting with a focus on sustainability, financial inclusion, and impact investing, topics that today must be considered transversely. We'll explore trends that are already shaking up the industry, such as embedded and decentralized finance spotting. Be part of the FinTech Revolution 2.0. Join ftsfest.com.
Hey guys, welcome back to Breaking Banks Europe at Money2020. After Claire Calmejane in the first part of the show, we are here with Manuel Silva. Manu, welcome to the show.
Yes, thanks for having me. It's good to see you in person again, finally.
Exactly. We had an amazing hug and I really was looking forward to it. Manu, to start with, a question that you have been asked a few times before, but it is always good to share. So, the genesis of Mouro Capital passed by the realization of Santander that they needed a vehicle, build Santander Innoventures, and now the transition to Mouro Capital. Why and how?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and it's interesting because, as you say, that question has been asked over the years, but with the current situation in the market, I think the answers I'm going to give you are even more relevant, right? Initially, when we spun out Santander Innoventures into Mouro Capital, which was like a year ago, it was based on basically two ideas. The first one is that we need to be more competitive in the market. We need to be faster, we need to be more independent, we need to be able to position ourselves with entrepreneurs as really a trusted party when we invest in companies. And the other one has to do more with talent capturing and retention, and being able to really be competitive on the talent market where it's very tough to hire people, and you need to be competitive with the other funds, right? And I think those two reasons are even more real today, where competitiveness for deals has increased a lot, and where VCs are judged really on the value that they can provide and on the facts and not on the theory. In a market where really the entrepreneurs seem to be having the pan holding the pan as opposed to investors maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
And I think though that the challenge of still being attractive for the bank, still stays, right? But how this sort of I don't want to say spin-off, but how this sort of change of setting made this more or less relevant in the startups that you invest in?
Yeah, I think somehow we're able to combine the best of both worlds, right? So we ourselves as a team have a lot of the knowledge that you would expect from a specialist VC, and really I think that's really what it's kind of all about. The fact that we're able to talk to entrepreneurs and fast forward maybe 2 or 3 meetings that a generalist VC would have, because we know exactly what they're talking about. We know why that payments problem exists. We know why the challenges of expanding a lending business internationally are. I mean, all those things are things that are very common to us. But then on the other side, we keep those relationships with Santander. We keep relationship with other banks and other stakeholders. So we also understand the incumbent industry, so to say, which oftentimes can be a partner or a client or an integration partner for startups, right? So I think we're kind of in the right sweet spots where we can put that intelligence to work, those connections to work, while still making kind of good investments.
It's actually a good transition to what I wanted to ask next. So how do you show that your smart money is smart and it may be smarter than others? Because you and I were saying earlier, most of the VCs that were born 10 years ago are successful because statistically speaking, you took either some multi-hundred million, if you're lucky, a couple of unicorns, as you did. But how do you measure, the value added that that a VC brings to an entrepreneur these days?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And we keep very close with entrepreneurs, and we ask for very, very candid feedback on, you know, specific things we do for them, specific requests they have, etc., etc. But really, I mean, I think that being a VC these days has become even more of a tough job, and, you know, theory doesn't work. It's the practice, and it's the hard work, and it's being there for your entrepreneurs when they need you, and it's also leaving them to do their thing when they require some space, right? So I think that's really the way we operate with our companies. We try to be there, we try to be engaged, we don't like to be a passive investor, but we let them judge what's the right distance and where we can be helpful versus others, right? We're big believers that at the end of the day, a startup, a successful startup, is of course the founder, it's a team, it's an idea, but it's also the ecosystem that you're able to build around. And really our objective is to help build that ecosystem that's suitable for CEOs to thrive and to build the biggest business they can build.
Another thing that I believe is interesting is that you know, Santander has a truly global footprint.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see interesting deals, you know, from like Europe and US, but also from typically like Latin America, right? So and how do you see the rise of these deals in emerging markets? Because we all know the couple of unicorns like Nubank, that was like the Revolut of Latin America.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be great to share some of your experience in how this fintech market evolved, you know, in places where that maybe are not in our everyday radar.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I mean, I think if COVID has done something, I feel it has democratized knowledge. And so typically, if you look at the classic ecosystems, you look at Silicon Valley, you look at London, you look at some parts in Asia. Back in the days, it was all about a concentration of capital, the right knowledge, and institutional factors. That has been democratized. And so what we're seeing, you know, taking Latin America as an example, is that even in the smallest corner of Latin America, you can build an amazing company. And so we've gone from a, you know, Brazil plus Mexico kind of architecture of the continent to, you know, Pushki in Ecuador being a unicorn, and amazing companies coming up in Colombia, and, you know, so a lot of these markets are starting to see a lot of that rise, and there's also a lot of capital available for the region now. But it's really about the ability, I think, to access knowledge and access entrepreneurs who've done it before, and gather that knowledge and those insights to build new companies. So very excited about that.
So you know, right now, as you know, I'm investing in Africa mainly, but if I remember the time where I was dealing with Europe, the collaboration between different VCs at the beginning of it was pretty strong.
Yeah.
Is that still the case, or maybe the fact that, you know, everyone grew bigger and, you know, you need less, so, you know, the experience tells you already what is the weight of the risk? So it is actually a genuine question that I'm having.
Yeah.
Is that, beside you and I that are friends, we would collaborate anyway, but how is the case now with also the new kids on the block?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think it's really about kind of the way the new kids on the block, if you will, are operating, right? So as you say, you know, we come from a more traditional co-investment setting, not because of a corporate VC background, but more so because we think that at each stage in a company, it's good to bring the right brains and nobody knows everything. So at the end of the day, if you bring 2 or 3 parties to the table that can help in such way, you know, it's always about smart capital. You can do that. Now the thing these days is that, you know, rounds have gone bigger at every single stage, and then you have a bunch of VCs that are much bigger in size, that because of their own mandate, ownership, etc., they want to take the whole round. So the whole co-investment, let's build something that's maybe a little bit more involved thing, oftentimes may not be the most appealing solution for an entrepreneur who on the other side may have a solution that's a clean term sheet, very quick, you know, kind of no structure, nothing like that, right? So I think that's kind of where the market is going. You know, I wouldn't say I'm, you know, happy about it, not happy about it. It's the way the market is going. I think sometimes entrepreneurs are leaving smart capital on the table for taking other term sheets that may be less helpful potentially. And so I would just say, you know, to the extent that people can think a little bit more twice, like, you know, maybe these people would be really more helpful to their business, because money is one thing, but then experience, connections, insights is another thing that, you know, needs to be valued accordingly, I think.
Thank you, Manu. Mira, ¿sabes qué? Acabo de tener una idea. ¿Y por qué no hacemos ahora una parte de la entrevista en español?
Muy bien.
Porque me gustaría hablar de del aspecto cultural, ¿no? de las inversiones. Yo creo que una cultura puramente anglosaxona o quizás europea, quizás entienden menos, ¿no? Lo que significa pues poner dinero en una startup que tiene un imprinting cultural fuerte, ¿no? Típicamente en Latinoamérica y tal. Tú pues tienes muchas culturas, ¿no? Porque de ser un europeo, pero también eres español y has vivido en Bélgica mucho tiempo, hablas francés y tal. ¿Y cuánto es importante tener ese aspecto también cuando hablas con los emprendedores, ¿no? Porque tal vez te sienten más cerca, ¿no? de su cultura y tal. ¿Es importante?
Es muy importante. O sea, yo creo que al final eso de invertir es como un matrimonio. Y entonces, al fin y al cabo, si inviertes en una compañía, pero la relación que tú tienes con tu inversor es de un gestor de activos, de un asset manager, fría, fiscalizante, ¿sabes? ¿Es divertido? No lo sé, ¿sabes? En cambio, si tienes una conexión más personal, porque sabes que va a haber momentos buenos y celebrar los momentos buenos es importante, y sabes que va a haber momentos malos y estar a las duras y a las maduras en los momentos malos también es importante. Yo creo que al final la conexión personal es súper importante.
Que al fin y al cabo, pues la empatía, ¿no? con los emprendedores y los founders te permite, yo creo, dos cosas. Primero, quizás de entender las matices, ¿no? que alguien que no habla el idioma no tiene. Pero también en los momentos chungos, ¿no? Pues te permite tener ese diálogo mano a mano, ¿no?
Sí, sí.
Que no sería posible si no piensas.
Sí. No, y además, por ejemplo, ahora nosotros estamos viendo mucho invertir en Europa en el sentido amplio de la palabra. O sea, tradicionalmente hemos tenido más inversiones en el Reino Unido, en Alemania, un poco por las dinámicas, pero ahora tenemos inversiones en Austria y en España y en Irlanda y estamos mirando más mercados. Y te das cuenta que al final la diversidad que hay en Europa y las dinámicas de cada mercado nacional hay que entenderlas también. Y al final, por mucho que todas las startups quieran tener un negocio paneuropeo, siempre tienen que empezar en un mercado. Y ser exitoso en ese mercado es importante. Y para ese éxito, pues hay que entender cómo funciona, yo qué sé, el cliente bancario alemán, o cómo funciona la burocracia francesa, o cómo funciona la picaresca española para vender, o yo qué sé. ¿Sabes? Cada país tiene un poco y en este mercado actual en el que el capital se ha vuelto tan global y en el que un inversor chino aparece, invierte en Irlanda y salta en otro avión e invierte en Brasil como si fuera un PowerPoint, ¿sabes? Yo creo que al final entender esas matices a veces es lo que te va a hacer ganar un deal y a veces sobre todo es lo que va a hacer que una compañía encuentre product market fit a que no lo encuentre, ¿no? Y yo creo que eso es importantísimo.
O en el caso, pues, que sin duda, pues, va a pasar muchas veces conseguir que esta startup pivotee, ¿no? Y que no sé cómo se dice en español, pero pivotear, ¿no? Que consiga pivotear porque el modelo de negocio en el que tú pues apuestas cuando inviertes en una startup tal vez no es el mismo 3 años después, ¿no?
Exacto. Sí, a ver, los negocios en particular en fintech son negocios regulados y la regulación no solo es regulación, son usos de cliente distintos, son muchas cosas. Entonces al final, si tú quieres invertir en un negocio que va a ser multipaís, entender la realidad de esos países es mucho más, o sea, es importantísimo. O sea, un Amazon puede expandir a un mercado nuevo con su playbook y no pasa nada y lo va a hacer bien, pero las fintechs es más complicado, por la naturaleza del producto, del consumidor y por lo que implica para el consumidor. Entonces, si no tienes esa empatía y esa capacidad, ya sea capacidad o curiosidad por entender cómo es el siguiente mercado, difícil.
Guys, we could brag and do the next one in French, but we will stop here. And thank you, Manu, for being with us.
Great to see you again. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That's Money2020 Breaking Banks Europe, and it's a wrap.
Thanks for listening to Breaking Banks Europe, a Provoke Media podcast in cooperation with FinTech Stage. Don't forget to tweet us out, shout out, or post to the team at Breaking Banks EU on Twitter. If there's something or someone you'd like to hear on our cast, let us know. See you next week on Breaking Banks Europe.